When a man is left with no one but the Almighty, he steps beyond the boundaries of earthly ties. In that sacred solitude, the illusions of material security lose their shine, and the reality of eternity begins to take shape. This isn't mere loneliness, it's consecrated ground. It is here that the soul learns a higher kind of reliance, not on the applause of men, nor on the comforts that pass like shadows, but on the presence of the everlasting. Look across the ages and you'll find a pattern. The mightiest men were not molded in crowds, but in quiet. Abraham turned his back on the familiar, walking toward a promise carried only by faith. Joseph endured betrayal, captivity, and silence long before his dream was crowned with fulfillment. Elijah stood alone against false prophets and corrupt kings, not because he was forsaken, but because he was chosen. Each of them passed through fire, but none of them burned, and neither shall you. You are not discarded, you are being shaped. You are not invisible, you are being prepared for a purpose not yet revealed. Heaven often works in the dark, where eyes cannot see and minds cannot fathom. That is why you must not retreat. Don't despise the silence. Don't run from the stillness. Stay in it. Something holy is unfolding. When the world forgets your name, when friends drift away, when those dearest to you no longer understand, and you find yourself on the edge of despair whispering, "God, I cannot go any further," that is when power descends. That is when strength arrives, not from within yourself, but from above. That is when peace invades the storm, not because the winds cease, but because your eyes finally see the one who walks upon the waves. Faith is not forged in ease. It is forged in contradiction, in the choice to believe when all logic says you shouldn't. When everything screams that you are finished, and yet a quiet voice says, "I am not finished with you." That is not imagination, that is faith, and that is the bedrock of an unshakable life. God has always been the God of impossibilities. He shows up, not when the conditions are ideal, but precisely when they are most desperate. He does not wait for a crowd. He does not demand ceremony. He walks into the prison cell, the lion's den, the furnace of affliction, and he does not delay. And he will do it again for the man who dares to call his name. Perhaps today, no one sees the weight you carry. They applaud your strength, but they do not perceive the silent wars within your soul. They see your smile, polished and firm, but they do not know of the nights when sleep fled and tears came uninvited. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to believe the oldest lie ever whispered into the heart of man, that you are alone in this. But hear me now, you are not. There is one who has never left your side, one who knows the path you've walked, the losses you've endured, the silent prayers that never found a voice. He sees the battles no one applauds. He sees the broken places carefully hidden behind the mask of composure, and still he calls you his own. He says, "You are mine." Not because you are flawless, but because you are known, fully, deeply, eternally. You are not forgotten. You are not cast aside. There is a kind of prayer, born not from comfort, but from collapse, a cry that breaks forth, not from eloquence, but from desperation, a prayer stripped of all formality, all pretense. It says simply, "Lord, if you do not come, I cannot go on." And that kind of prayer, raw, trembling, unfiltered, moves heaven. For when a man comes to the very end of himself, he finds the gateway to something far greater, grace. But understand this, grace is no frail sentiment. It is not a poetic concept to decorate sermons. Grace is a force. It is the outstretched hand of God reaching into the pit, not because you deserve it, but because he loves you. Grace lifts the man whose knees have buckled. It carries the one who has no strength left. It wraps the weary in mercy and does not keep a ledger of past failures. I do not know the valley you walk through today. I do not know the depth of the silence that surrounds you. But I know this, if you have God, you lack nothing. When all else fades, when men depart, when doors are closed, when answers do not come, God remains. and more than remaining, he restores. He does not merely sit beside you in your sorrow, he rebuilds you. He does not only soothe your grief, he transforms it into strength. He turns ashes into beauty, mourning into joy, defeat into purpose. There is still a future, there is still a hope, but you will not find it by chasing the approval of men or the distractions of a hollow world. You will find it on your knees, in the quiet place, where the one who fashioned you speaks life into your soul again. There comes a moment, sooner or later, in every man's journey when he finds himself alone. The laughter fades, the applause ceases, and the familiar voices go silent. He stands in the stillness, surrounded by four walls and 100 echoes of what once was. And in that quiet, a question arises, not from the mind, but from the soul. Have I been abandoned? To the flesh, solitude feels like a sentence, a punishment, but to the spirit, it is an invitation. For what if this silence, so heavy, so foreign, is not a sign of exile, but of elevation? What if this very emptiness is the holy ground where God begins his deepest work? Throughout the ages, it has always been this way. Before the mission comes the isolation. Before the crown, the cave. Before the calling, the wilderness. It is there, in the hush of obscurity, that God removes the noise of the world and draws near. When no crowd is present to applaud you and no stage awaits your performance, the only one left to listen is the one who matters most. And that, my friend, is where transformation begins. In solitude, the masks fall. The distractions dissolve. The man is left face to face not only with God, but with himself. And in that mirror of silence, he sees the truth, the fears he's hidden, the wounds he's ignored, the ambitions that once fueled him but no longer satisfy. And yet, this is not a cause for despair. No, this is the start of refinement, for it is not the perfect whom God chooses. It is the surrendered. It is not the self-assured whom he molds. It is the broken, the weary, the ones who say, I have nothing left but you. In the stillness, God does not demand. He invites. He draws near, not to condemn, but to restore. And in that secret place, where the world cannot reach, the soul begins to hear again, not the voice of doubt or distraction, but the voice of truth, a voice that says, be still, I am here, and I am enough. Solitude, then, is not an empty place. It is a full one. It is a chamber where strength is poured into weary bones, where clarity breaks through confusion, where peace settles into restless hearts. It is not punishment, it is preparation. And the man who does not flee the silence, who does not despise the stillness, that man will emerge, not as he was, but as who he was meant to be. All throughout history, the wilderness has not been a place of defeat, but of destiny. Before a man is lifted, he is often led into silence, into obscurity, into a place where comforts vanish and the applause of men can no longer reach. It is there, in that barren place, that the soul is tested and transformed. Consider Moses, once a prince in Egypt, a man of stature and influence. And yet it was not in the palace that he heard the voice of God. It was in the wilderness, 40 years of exile, of tending sheep in forgotten hills. But in that solitude, pride was stripped away. Fear was refined into faith. And there, through fire and stillness, Moses heard the call that would change the course of nations. Or think of David, anointed as king while still a boy, but his path to the throne was not immediate. No, he fled for his life, hid in caves, wandered through barren places, hunted by the very king he would replace. In those years of trial, he wrote psalms, not from comfort, but from caves. He learned to rule not with a scepter, but with a heart surrendered. He became a king in solitude, long before he sat upon the throne. Even the Son of God, before he began his public ministry, was led into the wilderness. For 40 days he fasted, alone, tempted, tested, and in that place of hunger and heat, he emerged not weakened, but ready, prepared, empowered by the Spirit to step fully into his divine mission. You see, the wilderness is never wasted. It is not a punishment. It is a place of preparation, a place where what is shallow is burned away, and only what is eternal remains. A man stripped of all false dependencies is a man finally ready to be entrusted with destiny. And let this truth settle deep within you. God is not absent in your wilderness, He is active. He is shaping you even now for a purpose that far exceeds your present perception. In the desert, distractions are silenced. The approval of men fades. The noise of the world is replaced by the still, steady voice of the Almighty. And in that clarity, you begin to see not who you were, but who you were always meant to be. So do not despise the wilderness. Do not rush through it. For it may be that in this very season of isolation, you are standing on the same holy ground where prophets once knelt, where kings were formed, where callings were born. The wilderness is not the end of your story. It is the chapter where everything begins. The wilderness is not only a place of testing, it is a furnace of refinement. Stripped of comforts, detached from applause, the soul is left with nothing but what is true. There, far from distraction, man is brought face to face with his limits. He can no longer pretend, no longer perform. In the silence, he must look inward and upward. And though it may seem like a place of emptiness, it is here that something sacred unfolds. The soul begins to hear, not with the ears, but with a deeper faculty, one dulled by noise but sharpened in stillness. It is in the quiet moments, when the world no longer pulls, that God whispers the loudest. In this silence, you are not being punished, you are being invited. Invited to surrender the illusion of control. Invited to release the burden of self-sufficiency. Invited to lay down every false identity, every ambition born of fear, every mask worn for the world's approval. For here, in the hush of solitude, your Creator begins to do what no man can do. He reshapes your very soul. What once gave you security no longer satisfies. The opinions of others lose their grip. The dreams you once chased begin to shift, not because they were evil, but because something deeper is awakening. You begin to long, not for applause, not for comfort, but for truth, for alignment, for the kind of peace that the world cannot manufacture and money cannot buy. And this is the miracle of the wilderness. It purifies not only your path, but your motives. It does not merely prune your actions, it transforms your heart. In this sacred space, God begins to write a new script, not written in ink, but etched upon the soul. He rewires the way you think. He teaches you to walk not by sight, but by surrender, not by striving, but by listening. And slowly, a new kind of strength takes root, not loud, not showy, but quiet, unshakable. The kind of strength that doesn't need a stage to exist. The kind that comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. You are not lost in this season. You are being found. You are not falling apart. You are being put together in a new way, deeper, stronger, eternal. So do not rush through this moment. Don't try to skip ahead. Let the silence do its work. Let it reveal, let it refine, let it renew. For in the place where everything else falls away, only truth remains. There are seasons in a man's life when heaven goes quiet. You pray and no answer returns. You knock and the door does not open. You wait and nothing stirs. In those moments, it is tempting to believe the worst, that God has turned his face, that you have been forgotten, that your cries have gone unheard. But listen closely. Silence is not the absence of God. It is the presence of his deeper work. We are born into a world that craves immediacy. We want answers now, solutions fast, comfort without delay. But the eternal is not governed by the ticking of our clocks. He does not rush, he does not panic, he prepares, and often his greatest preparations are wrapped in silence. Consider the Israelites, enslaved for generations, their voices lifted in anguish. Did heaven hear? Yes. But heaven waited, not because it was indifferent, but because it was orchestrating a deliverance no man could manufacture. Or consider the Garden of Gethsemane, the Son of God, on his knees, sweating blood, crying out in agony, and the sky was silent. Yet in that silence, redemption was unfolding. The silence did not mean abandonment. It meant the plan was in motion. You see, God's silence is not a wall, it is a womb. It is the space where faith is formed, where trust is tested, where pride is stripped away and the soul learns to lean. And it is in this very silence that the question is asked: will you trust me even when you cannot trace me? True faith is not forged in moments of clarity, it is forged in the shadows. It is not proven by how loudly you worship in public, but by how steadfastly you wait in private. When the heavens seem closed and your heart aches for a whisper. But know this: God is not still because he has nothing to say. He is still because he is shaping something in you, something around you, something ahead of you. And when the time is right, the silence will break, not with noise, but with purpose. So do not mistake divine silence for divine distance. God is nearer than you think. He is the potter, and you are the clay. And silence is the sound of the wheel turning. Stand firm in the quiet. Wait well. And when he speaks, the world you know will shift. There comes a day in every man's life when he reaches the edge. He has given all he had. The weight has grown too heavy, the battles too long, the hope too faint, and he stands there, stripped of illusion, strength spent, hands empty, and soul aching. It is here at the end of himself that a sacred thing happens. He falls, and in falling he discovers the one thing that cannot be earned, cannot be controlled, and cannot be destroyed: grace. Not a soft word, not a sentimental idea. Grace is the thunderous answer of heaven to the cry of the broken. It is the invisible hand that catches the man who no longer knows how to stand. It does not wait for him to rise. It descends into the pit and lifts him. Grace is not fragile, it is fierce. It is the strength that enters when all human effort collapses. It is the voice that speaks when every other has gone silent. It is not a suggestion, it is a rescue. You see, grace does not arrive when we are strong. It arrives when we are undone. And the man who has tasted true grace walks differently. He does not boast, he does not judge, he does not pretend. He knows what it is to be carried, he knows what it is to be sustained, not by merit, but by mercy. The Apostle Paul, a man who suffered deeply, once pleaded 3 times for relief from a torment he called a thorn in the flesh. And the answer from God was not what he expected. The voice from heaven said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And Paul's response, "Therefore I will glory in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me." He understood a truth that few embrace. Weakness is not a disqualification. It is the door through which true strength enters. And this, dear friend, is where transformation begins, not at the peak of your performance, but at the pit of your need. God does not wait for you to have it all together. He steps into your unraveling. He meets you, not in your success, but in your surrender. So if you are weary, let go. If you are burdened, collapse into his arms. If you are empty, make space for the fullness of his grace. Because the truth is this: the end of you is the beginning of him. And in that divine exchange, what once felt like failure becomes the place where glory is born. Grace does not merely lift you, it reshapes you. It does not stop at catching your fall. It teaches you to walk again, stronger, truer, transformed. Grace is not a temporary balm. It is the very breath of God, breathing new life into what was thought to be beyond repair. And hear this truth: you do not have to earn it. You do not need to prove your worth, perfect your image, or pretend your pain away. For grace is not given to the qualified. It is poured out on the desperate. It meets you where strength has failed, where plans have crumbled, where the heart has broken one too many times. And there, where the world sees ashes, grace plants the seed of beauty. Grace is not exhausted by your weakness. It is drawn to it. When you've stumbled again, when you swore you wouldn't fall this time, but you did, grace does not turn away. It steps in, wraps you in mercy, and says, "I'm not finished with you yet." It is in these very moments, the raw, unfiltered, undone places of your soul, that the greatest miracles begin. Because grace is not just comfort, it is power. Power to forgive where bitterness once ruled. Power to rise where shame had buried you. Power to begin again, not in your name, but in His. This is the secret strength of every soul who has endured the fire and lived to tell. They were not sustained by willpower, but by grace. And once you've been held by it, you cannot remain the same. Grace does not leave you where it found you. It restores what was lost. It rebuilds what was shattered. It renews what was dead. It gives you the strength to face tomorrow. Not because tomorrow is easy, but because you are no longer facing it alone. So if today you feel that you've run out of fight, if the tears have blurred your vision and the weight has bowed your shoulders, take heart. You are not forsaken. You are not disqualified. You are not too far gone. In fact, you may be standing on the very edge of your breakthrough. For when a man comes to the end of himself, grace comes rushing in, not as a whisper, but as a flood. And that flood will not only carry you forward, it will carry you home. There are nights when the darkness feels endless, when you walk the corridors of your own mind and every door seems to lead to sorrow. When you look ahead and the path is hidden, and all you carry is exhaustion. In those moments, it is easy to believe the lie that you are drifting, forgotten, lost. But it is exactly there, in the deepest shadows, that two lights still burn: faith and hope. Faith is not the absence of struggle. It is the decision to trust in the midst of it. It is the quiet, unwavering whisper that says, even if I cannot see the way, I will keep walking. Hope is not a fleeting emotion. It is a lifeline, a deep inner knowing that this moment is not the end of your story, that something greater is at work, even if unseen. Faith says, God is still with me. Hope replies, and He's not finished yet. These are not just concepts to be recited in good times. They are anchors for the soul when the storm hits. They hold you steady when friends are gone, when prayers seem unanswered, when the weight of your waiting grows heavier with each passing day. But remember this, waiting is not wasting. God's delays are never denials. His silence is never indifference, and His process is never without purpose. Through the fire, character is forged. Through the waiting, strength is built. Through the struggle, compassion is born. Joseph waited in a prison cell, forgotten by men, but not by God. And in due time, the dungeon gave way to destiny. Paul endured chains and persecution, yet wrote letters that would one day shake empires and awaken generations. They endured, not because they were superhuman, but because they held on to a hope greater than their pain. And so must you. Hold fast, not to what you see, but to what you know, that your Creator is faithful, that your struggle has meaning, that your midnight hour will not last forever. And when dawn breaks, and it will, you will not rise the same. You will rise refined. You will rise with eyes that see deeper, with words that carry more weight, and with a heart that knows what it means to trust, even when all else falls away. That is the strength of the man who walks by faith and not by sight. Every trial you've endured, every tear you've shed, every night you spent questioning why, it was not meaningless, it was preparation. Though the pain felt cruel and the silence unbearable, heaven was not asleep. The fire was not meant to destroy you, it was meant to forge you. The crushing you felt, that was the pressing of oil from the olive. The breaking you experienced, that was the releasing of hidden strength. The waiting, that was heaven's way of forming a foundation that will not crack when the weight of purpose arrives. You see, greatness is not born on stages. It is born in caves. Destiny is not launched from comfort. It is launched from surrender. God is not raising up performers. He is shaping messengers, people who have lived what they preach, people who speak not from theory, but from the trenches. And you, yes, you, are one of them. The struggle you are walking through is not disqualifying you, it is qualifying you. God is entrusting you with scars that speak, scars that say, I've been through the valley, and I've come out with fire in my bones. The world is not changed by the comfortable, it is changed by the consecrated. Those who have been emptied and filled again. Those who have wrestled in silence and emerged with authority. And when the time is right, God will bring you forward, not a second too early, not a moment too late, but in the fullness of His time. And when that moment comes, you will not rise timid or unsure. You will rise as one who has been tried, tested, and trusted. Your words will carry weight, not because they are loud, but because they are true. Your presence will carry peace, not because life has been easy, but because you've learned where peace is found. And when they ask, "How did you survive?" you will answer, "I had no one but God." And that was enough. This is not the end of your story. This is the turning point, the chapter that changes everything. Stay faithful, stay yielded, stay available. The author is still writing, and what he writes next will be worth it all. One day, you will look back on this season, and you won't curse it. You'll bless it, not because it was easy, but because it was holy, because it brought you to the end of yourself. And there, when all else was stripped away, you discovered what was eternal. You'll say, "It was in that silent room that I finally learned to listen. It was in that dark valley that I first saw the light. It was when I had no one left that I discovered God was all I ever needed." And when you rise from this place, and you will, you won't rise empty. You'll rise with something unshakable, not borrowed inspiration, not rehearsed lines, but truth lived in your bones, fire-tested, storm-proven, real. Your voice will carry weight because you've earned it in the silence. Your presence will carry peace because you've bled for it in private. You'll walk into rooms full of chaos and not be moved. You'll stand before broken people and speak healing because you've lived it. And when they ask, "How did you make it through?" you'll answer, not with pride, not with platitudes, but with quiet conviction. "I had no one but God." And that was enough. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone. You are not disqualified. In fact, you are exactly where you need to be for something sacred to unfold. For when a man is reduced to nothing but God, he becomes a man God can truly use. He no longer clings to shallow support systems. He no longer chases the echo of applause. He no longer hungers for what cannot satisfy. He stands on the rock. And that kind of man cannot be shaken. So breathe deep, stand tall, walk slow. This is not the final word. This is the refining fire. This is the chapter that redefines you. The world may not see it yet, but heaven knows something holy is rising. So now rise, not because your pain is gone, not because the road is easy, but because you are no longer the same. You have been broken. You have been emptied. You have been refined. And now you are ready. Ready to speak with fire. Ready to walk with peace. Ready to stand, not in pride, but in purpose. You carry something the world did not give you and therefore cannot take away. Let them wonder where your strength comes from. Let them ask how you still stand. And when they do, look them in the eye and say, "I have been to the wilderness. I have heard the silence. I have walked alone, but I was never abandoned. I was being prepared. And now it's your time to pour out what was poured into you, to lift the weary, to speak life into the hopeless, to walk into dark rooms and carry light, not the flicker of emotion, but the flame of truth. Because this world does not need more noise. It needs men and women of substance, people forged in stillness, people whose voices echo eternity. You are that voice. You are that flame. So go. Not in fear, but in fire, not in haste, but in holy certainty. Go not to prove anything to the world, but to obey the whisper that called you in the dark. Your scars are not shame, they are signals. They mark you as one who survived, one who surrendered, one who was sent. And now you are sent. Not empty, not broken, but full, refined, ready. So speak, stand, live what you've learned, and never forget this truth. When you had nothing left, when all crumbled, when you were down to nothing but God, that was the moment heaven began to build, and it built you.